Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour. My name is Jason Rockman, and this is a podcast where we meet once a week, every Monday, to talk to very interesting people from the world of pop culture. And this week, we've got two very interesting people. Both of them are very different, but together make a super team that have brought a couple of really, really cool projects together. And this latest one is definitely a controversial one for some people, but it's something that was brilliantly put together, and I'm very, very happy that we have Tony Stone and Melissa Auf Der Maur with us today on the Rockman Power Hour. But before we get to that, let's bring in our co-host Ryan Stick. Ryan,
how's it going?
I'm good. So we both got to see this movie.
Oh yes,
and I'm excited about that because we don't always get to see the things we talk about together at the same time, or I'll see, but this time we both got to see it. And I think we were both were marked by this movie.
Yeah, usually you get to see this stuff, and I just smile and I say, I'm sure it's great. And this time around, I got to see it too. I actually got to see it before you. And my one advice was, I'm like, dude, I know your schedule. Don't watch this at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is like a film. This isn't a movie, bro. This is like a film.
Yeah.
And a deep, dark character piece. And it is best, go on that journey with him. And I really dug the movie because I really love that actor ever since District 9.
Yeah, Sharlto Copley.
I've been totally into him. He's amazing. He was in the very underrated and amazing A-Team movie as Mad Dog Murdoch.
Yeah.
And he's done so much stuff, Hardcore Henry. And just to see, if anybody were to tackle a movie about the Unabomber, it's definitely him. And I love the direction in this movie too. I mean, seriously, what a voice. What a cinematic voice this director has when it comes to gels and colors and tones and music choices. It was a really cool film.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's funny because, I work till midnight and my plan was to try to watch this, at night. And then when I went to put the screening link on, the site that hosts it was down for maintenance, just routinely down for maintenance at the time I wanted to watch it. So I got up early in the morning and I watched the film, and I'm really glad I did because, early morning for me, being an old fucker now, it's the best. It's the best time for me. From 6 to 10, 11 in the morning, I'm probably the most focused and the most productive. And it was great. I really enjoyed the film. And I'm really glad we get to talk to both of the people that were involved with the film, the executive producer, Melissa Auf Der Maur, who of course, is a name that a lot of people will know from her stint in the band Hole. She was in Hole. She was also in Smashing Pumkins for a bit, and she had a very successful solo career. And she's been dabbling in all types of medium when it comes to arts for a while. So it's nice to see her pair up with Tony Stone, who just happens to also be her life partner and her husband. They share, they're parents to a child. And you could tell that when they made this movie, this project was a labor of love. And I think that whatever goes on off screen with the two of them, it shows in their work because, man, this film was something else. I really, really enjoyed it. But Ryan, before we get too far ahead and we bring Tony and Melissa on, we have to thank our sponsor of the podcast, Heartbeat Hot Sauce. I today decided to pull out this one, which I just tried. And I had tried most of them before they even came on board with the podcast because I've been a client for years. The Hedonist number 4. This is the Lion's Mane Piri Piri sauce. This one is...
That's the one I chose.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What do you think of this one? It's good,
We're
right?
hot sauce buddies.
I know.
We're hot sauce twins. I like it a lot. I like the name too. Because I'm wearing my new Studio House Hellraiser shirt. And I thought, speaking of heathens...
Yeah. And this one on the meter goes a little past medium. What I love about Heartbeat is they always have their little spice meter on the back of the bottle. So, this one will go from between a medium and a hot. And if you're ever down here in the extra hot, that's warning. But no, they will give you the indication. And I love this one. It's really, really, and you are down in the Heartbeat hot sauce.
It's like calling the Xenobites, Jason.
All right. Well, we're going to bring in our guests for today's episode, Tony and Melissa. Please enjoy it. They are both from the film Ted K, the director and the executive producer. Here they are, right here on the Rockman Power Hour. So the last time you and I chatted, Melissa, was for Out of Our Minds.
Yeah, I know. It's been a nice reunion with some of the Montreal talkers. I like it.
That was a while back, and that again back then. I think I just started at Shome. It was like maybe my third interview that I had done like 12 years ago or 11 years ago, and I remember thinking at the time that was a really ambitious project.
Yes, and maybe possibly even ahead of its time in terms of the multimedia components, because I remember speaking to Capitol Records at the time because I was still signed with them from the first record. Like, it's a movie, it's a comic, it's an album. And they say, no, you're a musician. Pick which one is it? And I said, no, it's actually all of it. I'm a multimedia artist. I went to Concordia University. But yeah.
Now you would see an artist like something like that would be commonplace, where their pre-order bundles up and they've got this and this all together. So
yeah.
But I'm really glad you guys are both with me today. I was talking before to Tony before you jumped on. I got a chance to watch the movie. I watched it early this morning, and I'm glad I watched it early because but it was good. It was perfect because I work late, and I tried to jump on the link last night, but the server was under maintenance, so it wasn't allowing me to see it until after midnight. So I watched it this morning, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And what I liked about this movie was there were things in this movie where, as much as you want to say this guy's a bad guy, I kind of understood where he was coming from, because there's a lot of the times where you will walk around and you're just frustrated with the way the world's going. And it's weird to kind of paint this guy in a sympathetic way. And I'm not saying that you did, but you can't help but kind of feel bad for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think we look at things so black and white these days. So that was a big sort of underlying concept, was just to get into the gray of who this person is and realize there's a human behind it, and how did he get to this point? So you kind of see that the guy is damaged. You see that he has, obviously some mental issues. But I think if we kind of can approach a lot of things in the world with more compassion, be a better off society, So, that's where, and the way people kind of look at Ted, it's either this simplistic vilification narrative, or it's something, he's heroic, prophetic, and wanted to be just straight up truthful about who this guy was. So, there's a lot of research involved in the film, and approaching the film more like it was a documentary, even though it's very cinematic and it's a narrative, but with sort of the research of just getting to who the person is. And, that's where you see at the beginning of the movie, we filmed on the exact location, filmed in Lincoln, Montana, where he was from, used some of the remaining structures that were around his property, and used a lot of the real people in the movie, that knew him, So, just wanted to get to the truth of it. And I think you kind of get to the truth of it. There is some empathy that comes through. And I think in these times of just, over, techno reliance and techno addiction mixed with environmental degradation, that's all kind of hand in hand to distract us from real problems like climate change. His words have meaning. You can kind of relate to the rage,
Oh, yeah.
And when do people act on their rage is so interesting, right? And so sometimes you see it in moments, like January 6th or other environment, then radical environmental groups as well. He's kind of emblematic of a lot of problems in society. Just in a way that moves sort of a vehicle to talk about some of these ideas as well.
And when you watch him, it doesn't take long to realize that this guy has some underlying issues. I mean, and obviously he's severely socially awkward. There's a point where he's talking to his mom on the payphone, and he said, I've only tongue kissed twice in my life. And I think we've all known guys like Ted in our life, that are kind of on the fringe and a little outside. It might not fit in that box that everybody likes to put everybody in. It's interesting to see it from that perspective, because right away you would be like, well, this guy was a horrible person. I mean, he set bombs off on people's faces. I mean, there's no way to bring a human side to this guy, but I think you guys did. Nowadays it's so hard to have a conversation and not be on one side or another side. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have, is that everybody wants to plant their flag in the sand and not realize that there's a lot of gray in between. And I think this was a great way to portray his story, but give people a chance to have a little bit of empathy for a bad guy.
Yeah, and also maybe have your own takeaway too.
Exactly.
So that's sort of like, a lot of new material is morality theater, and that is just sort of disrespectful to audiences. I feel like, we're far more sophisticated. That's why a lot of the films we loved, 70s anti-hero movies, where you kind of get to, this sort of movie or this escapism, right? You get to go into the head of these other people, live these other lives. And that was super interesting from the beginning, was let's tell the story super subjective. So you don't see any of the FBI, you're just in this guy's world, and then hopefully get into his head. And maybe that's uncomfortable. Maybe it helps you look at the world a little differently, even though you're with a madman. Looking at Ted more as if he, let's say, we were his family member. We were his brother David. So that was sort of, if he was sort of familiar, how would we think about this person?
But I also think what's important, especially for those, there's like a cult awareness of Ted Kaczynski because of his manifesto that's been highly, like, that's how he was caught, was by getting the New York Times and Washington Post to publish his manifesto. And I think what's most important to talk about, because it's not like Tony and then me as executive producer who's supported Tony in his American storytelling. I wouldn't just want to make a movie about a madman. That's not of interest, but someone who had something to say, that in 1996, when they published the manifesto, and with every decade, what he said, which is basically the rise of technology is threatening the planet and humans. And the thing that he is saying is what is most important to look at, and why he was worth subjectively diving into is that he was, and what's cool about Tony's movie is it doesn't go into the biopic of in 1972, he graduated from Harvard, but he was a brilliant mathematician. He was a brilliant mind, and a lot of smart, brilliant people do have, can fall off a cliff of madness and so it's, definitely a mad genius problem, but more than anything, he saw something coming and he did this for 25 years. He was watching the rise of industrialized technology over the course of 25 years. And he, by 1990, whatever, was trying to get the message out. In some ways, it was altruistic. Even though the film, just so people know, is all based on his writing, his diaries. Right. So Tony didn't interpret anything. A guy kept a journal basically saying, I'm not doing this to save the world. I'm doing this because I'm angry. And so that's what's most powerful, I think, about the story. And as a Montrealer who somehow gets involved because my joke and reaching out about doing press on this film is, how does Melissa from Montreal, the bass player, connect to this American terrorist? So I'm trying to justify right now what the story is so of this time. And when Tony started developing this script, and I am his partner in not only filmmaking, but we have an art center in upstate New York. We have a daughter. We are married. So he directed the film that went with Out of Our Minds. We made another movie called Peter and the Farm. So we're life partners in creation. And when he started developing this project 10 years ago, and my role is to sort of go out to people in Hollywood, see if actors will read it. We got Viggo Mortensen and Joaquin Phoenix to read it, and people were not those two madmen. They were open to it actually, but people were afraid of this story. Oh no, you can't do it. No, he's an American terrorist. Post 9/11, terrorism, and mainly. So in the last 10 years, we premiered this at Berlin last year, virtually, unfortunately, within weeks of the insurrection of the Capitol. Yeah. And every year that this story has waited to come out is more relevant because the rage in everywhere, but in America in particular, and the takeover of technology and the people being pushed to the edges of nowhere and nothing because of basically corporate greed and technology, lobotomizing, where there's much less humanity in people's interaction. And so that is what's really interesting and powerful about the story is how, and Tony does this in his other films, is revisiting moments in American history and seeing how every decade the story looks a little different. Yeah. And this person who is still alive, he's got terminal cancer in life in prison. He's my parents' age, he's almost 80 and he's not going to live much longer, but he's still alive. And he might die being understood a little bit more than he was when captured in 1996. And that's all he probably wants.
Right. Yeah.
Someone to see that there was a brilliant mind who was questioning the direction of the world. And, as alternative musician, alternative filmmaker, we're independent thinking people. And our job is to find kernels of truth in radical independent thinking. Yeah. And, even just talking to some of my father's old colleagues at CJD yesterday. It's like, my father was a radical politician for his time in Montreal, and I was raised by two parents who raised me to think differently and to question those in power. And that's, a bit of what this guy was doing, but he went way too far, obviously. But Tony made it a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
So it's actually beautiful to watch, even though it's gut-wrenching. And it's not gory. It's not like, there's, a true crime element, but I would not be interested if it was like a gory true crime horror movie. It is a beautiful, emotionally psychedelic, strange film about a complicated man.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's not a horror movie at all, but there were some horrible things that happened in the movie. But there are two scenes in the movie that, and I look, I'm a horror aficionado. I love horror movies. I'm a movie guy. I love cinema. But there were two scenes in that movie that were so scary. And they were so subtle. There's the one where he gets picked up when his bike is broken down. He gets in the car and he looks over at the driver when the driver's playing jokes on him. And that look that he gives the driver is terrifying. That whole thing where he's gazing at him and you're just looking to Sharlto's eyes and you're just like, oh man, this guy's got some rage behind him. And there's that. And of course the cinder block scene.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was really important to have that scene right up front where you early on, where it's just a Ted gives a look and you see that he can kill.
Oh yeah, you can see there's something. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how the subtlest things can be the most terrifying.
I know, and I love that performative moment too. And then you're also engaged as an actor, but as just sort of like, this guy can act. Like I'm committed to Sharlto on this journey. But yeah, I love that look. Because there's also, you see the disdain to his neighbors too, and you can also kind of tell that the guy, even though you don't see him off camera, he is off camera, you don't see him, is unaware that he's also kind of getting that stare. So kind of had sort of hidden actions underlying this conversation. I mean, that's where once again, just the person himself is so damaged, and he takes out these violent acts. But it's interesting, just sort of as a viewer, can we have these moments of connection? And that's what I was interested in. And, is there other people in American history that you could, trying to make a movie about Timothy McVeigh who bombed Oklahoma City? That's a far other, leap of empathy that I don't think is possible,
Well, no, you're right. It's funny because I like, for example, Jared Leto, when they did the biopic on Lennon's killer, like I thought that was just distasteful. The whole thing about it was gross. And it made me actually, he fell from I held him in high regard before that. And after that, I was just like, why would you want to method act that guy?
No, exactly.
But I didn't feel this. And that's what I mean. You guys really succeeded at telling this story and really leaving it up to people to have their own interpretation. But in a way that was, I never thought I would be able to sympathize with the Unabomber in a way. And I'll say that. You don't have to say it. I'll say it. I'll take the heat if people come back.
I mean, once again, we use the H word, humanity, it's just like, there is, and it's the same reason I'm against the death penalty. There's still these humans behind there, and how they get to this situation. It's, chance and circumstance.
Yeah.
And they carry out this way. And, I think he's lost, he's sort of this frontiersman that's alone, that could never love, or never be loved. And how things could have turned out differently in a way that's such promise, and so that's always just an interesting theme of to have sort of such promise, such intelligence, and then take these wrong turns in life, but at the same time, and Melissa's talking about how we look at history and when we first started to, look back at historic moments, when we first started this film 10 years ago, people were disgusted by the idea of wanting to tell this story.
Sure.
But now, 10 years that you mentioned it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Or the Chicago Tribune, pretty conservative newspaper, talking about how the Unabomber was right when iPhone 10 came out, and this is just a couple of years ago. So, once again, it's the vehicle to talk about these things. And I think as we really are facing this climate cliff that we're going to go off of, technology has really, at a point where we really need focus to actually deal with these huge existential problems. We're all distracted because of technology and infighting, so the time we really need to be together and prioritize actual real problems. We're bickering about these sideline issues.
Yeah.
So, and that's, so what's interesting is, Ted had no idea how technology was actually going to be implemented to change our lives, but the way he sort of generalized it, it's actually taken on more powerful meaning than it was when it was first written. So and that's the thing with alternative histories is in 20 years we really are in this middle of this climate catastrophe. We're going to look back at them differently.
Yep. I think as every year passes, we're going to look at them differently.
Yeah. And then in no way is that like condoning his actions by any means, but it's somebody who was ringing the alarm, and the people who were ringing the alarms. I mean, Ted Kaczynski was highly influenced by Bill McKibben and people like this and other primitivists. So he's sort of this amalgamation of a lot of different environmentalists and primitivists, and was very inspired by Earth First, which is an interesting group that is in the film briefly, where it was a group that was actually taking action to protect the Earth, and it was a moment late in the 80s and early 90s where people were still hopeful that you could change things for the better.
Yeah.
And when we have millions of people dying from air pollution, basically solely responsible because of fossil fuels, it's kind of incredible that we're taking very little action.
I know. It's really sad.
I mean, it's 100 companies that are responsible for 70% of carbon emissions. So how we kind of let this go, and now we're at a point where we really got to act soon. So that really has taken on more his writings, and just the urgency of it all is taken on more significance as time has we've gotten further from the event.
The music in this movie, there's obviously there's the original compositions that were done for the film. I don't want to talk about that, but I want to talk about some of the choices. I know there's a Typo Negative song in there.
Glad you caught that.
I did. I saw there's a great Alice in Chains song in there. Were they easy to get? And was that, Melissa, did you have a hand in that?
We did. Like all different angles.
Kept on having
personal
to write,
letters.
Hello, I'm a Universal Records recording artist, and I'd always get the kind of lower person on the rank. I'm like, can I please speak to your supervisor? Can I please speak to your supervisor? Yes, we're an independent film. No, we don't have a big budget, but I do. I think that the band would appreciate this. We're telling a story. We think that they think what So yeah, I mean, definitely music supervisor stuff that's how Tony and I met actually with his first film, a Viking film that he called Severed Ways: The Norse Discovery of America, which is a super cool, like made on tiny mini DVs starring him. It was straight out of college, and it was an amazing film that I was asked to just look at a rough cut to see if I could give some input on the soundtrack, because he wanted to make a period piece in 2007 with Brian Eno, Judas Priest, all these cool sound modern music. And so I was just going to look at it to see if I could help get any of the music clear. And I fell in love with the film and the filmmaker all at the same time. But the music is big in all of Tony's films, which is why film is such a cool medium, is that you can utilize all the visuals, the acting, and the words and the music. But this Alice in Chains was not my idea, but I definitely helped bring it home. I got in touch with the managers and all that.
And I mean, it was super cool. I mean, they gave approval. They watched the scene. I think they saw the significance of how it worked in the film, the time period. I mean, weirdly, the lyrics line up. I mean, it's also that moment is, it's kind of perverse, right? You're in the scene as a lot of cinematic montages that glorify violence, and you think you're kind of in that ride, and then you're ripped out of it with this gory explosion. You're like, oh, this is real life. You're like into this, Ted's looking the coolest he's ever looked, and he's strutting, and then like, oh, this is disgusting. And we cut out super hard, and you're back in the carnage.
It's really, I mean, it's so well put together, that whole scene. And when that song is all about Jerry's dad coming back from Vietnam and stuff. It's just, it just really, it was, you have these modern songs, and then you've got Vivaldi like all through the movie.
Yes, exactly. And those are Ted's favorite. Ted was a big Baroque fan, so Bach, Vivaldi, other Baroque composers. And I am too, actually. Like, classical is kind of great, but I love Baroque. There's something very mathematical, obviously something very metal about it too. Yeah. So it's kind of the palette goes back and forth. And even Blake Mass's, score, it kind of aligns with that.
I love their score. And I saw that they were part of the whole Sacred Bones family, which, I'm a big Carpenter fan. I spent way too much money on that website pre-ordering stuff.
Okay.
How did you get them involved? And were they friends beforehand, or?
Blake Mass is actually one guy.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So
kind of like
yeah.
Ted Kaczynski's The Freedom Club.
Yeah.
He's one guy.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So
But
live
Sacred
up there.
Bones are all friends too.
We've done a bunch of stuff with Sacred Bones, and actually Blank Mass came and played our music festival about 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And that was super powerful. You know, so we were fans before. We liked his previous band too, which was with somebody else, Fuck Buttons. But you know, timing is everything with all these things. And we started talking just as the pandemic was starting. So, you know, musicians weren't touring. So he had a lot of time on his hands.
Yeah.
He had done one other movie, but just knew the power of his sounds from all his albums that are very analog heavy and just very emotional. So yeah, he connected with the film, and we just spent a lot of time, and we kind of did it on and off for 6 months during the pandemic. And he was in the UK and I was out east, so you know, he'd do stuff all day, and then I listened to it at night. So kind of had some good timing to just sort of process it. And even though we're in the same room, it worked out very well.
I mean, it's one person, all digital, you know, all electronic. And when we invited them to play at Basilica Soundscape, our music festival in upstate New York, I'm always sort of weary of like the one man and a computer on a stage. I'm like, it's never as powerful as drums, but it sounded as powerful because of the way he processes things, and that he is a musician who composes and brings in voices and brings in real instrumentation. So like I knew that this sort of techno tech movie would definitely be done by a radical electronic artist, and of course the Baroque, and he just seemed like the absolute best, because he was the only live performance I had seen that was as like intense and commanding the full band. And yeah, the soundtrack is out on Sacred Bones on vinyl, and super cool, and I recommend it.
I think I'll be taking a trip over after. But it's great because, you know, you've got the whole battle between, you know, the earth and technology, and you kind of have that on the soundtrack too. You know, you've got stuff like, you know, the Vivaldi, which is very organic, and then you've got something that's very electronic. So it kind of goes with the theme of the film.
Definitely. And electronic music is sometimes just, you know, adding emphasis to his emotions, but at the same time is also the sound that's aggravating him so much.
Yeah.
You know? So it's drone, and it's the invasion of sort of technology into his world. So yeah, it kind of, you know, has an interesting way of you know, sort of the economy works both ways. And then the solace, I mean, you know, those were Baroque pieces that I just fell in love with, you know, so trying to find that universal you know, tracks that we all just like, and you know, we're making music for, you know, hundreds of years. So to go back into that catalog and find these timeless masterpieces that, you know, most people don't know. So obviously there's some Four Seasons in there that's a little more familiar. I'm really trying to find some great gems in there, just and in line with the way, you know, he really felt, and the fact that his limited bit of technology was the radio, you know. So that was interesting, is that was his soundtrack in the woods was, you know, talk radio or the classical music station. That was his only companion.
Melissa, you're you know, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it, because I've got you on the line. You've got such a history with music, you know, especially 90s music. When do you like the position you're in now, where you're able to kind of be like in the background as a producer and not necessarily be in the spotlight? Do you find as much satisfaction?
Yeah, well, I'm writing my memoir right now, and I have been kind of reviewing the decade chapters. So I basically had the decade and a little more with the bands and my solo record, and my creative career in the decades that have just passed is that I'm seeing a reoccurring. So I had like the big world travel bass player rock thing for almost 15 years. And then at a very exciting, magical moment, I got pregnant, got married, and founded a art center in upstate New York. And for me, that was the way to start giving, well, first of all, having a home and not world traveling, and having a place where I could actually be a mother for a moment. And ultimately give back to artists, so create a platform. So Basilica Hudson, our art center, is a platform to support independent alternative voices in arts and culture. So everything from film and music and visual arts, and a lot of green environmental advocacy and activism. And that role, whether it happens to have coincidentally be simultaneous to being a mother, but the idea of supporting others in finding their way, but also as a bass player, that wasn't really, that was pretty much what a bass player does anyhow, is glue the pieces, step at the back. So I'd already had like a supporting role style. And then in finding a life partner, Tony, and being able to support multiple projects that we both believe in, and he helping me with my projects, us working together with this art center, his films. It's really an exciting, I was describing it to someone the other day that at Basilica, when we put on the music festivals, even though I'm just curating it, producing it, like I'm as excited for that festival as when I was playing. I obviously missed the actual bass playing, but I'm excited to create a room of enthusiasm. With COVID, we haven't been doing as many music festivals, but what's been really satisfying with the films is watching a different kind of art form that takes honestly so much more time and horrendous tedious work than any music festivals or music. I don't know how Tony does it in terms of he edits them himself too. It's insane. But watching that, I love putting people together in exciting things that move people and that obviously have beauty, but also push people into new ways of thinking. So it's kind of all the same for me, but it's been a very compatible chapter for me to shift into more of a supportive role, and also just learn how part of my language shit gets done. I want to know how things get done. And that's definitely been my role in my life. It's just make stuff, it happen and make it.
Guys, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today. I love the film, and I think the fact that people can go see the film in the theater like it's supposed to be seen, and then have a Q&A with you after is a wonderful chance to get inside the mind of the filmmakers and of the producers. So thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed the film as much as I went into it thinking, how am I going to enjoy a film about Ted Kaczynski? I really did. I really did. And I thought it was really, really well told. And I wish people could have more conversations about subjects like this nowadays, because this was the perfect way to show somebody how to have a conversation that doesn't have to be black and white, where you can see all the shades of it.
Yeah. And that's definitely why we're appreciative of Cinema du Parc, because the conversations after the screenings, especially after all the isolation and COVID and these kinds of fears that people have, fears of people, basically on every level, crazy people and virus level, but it's really important conversations to have. So we're looking forward to having it with Montreal.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Man, it's really cool to hear Alice in Chains in a movie. I know, a lot of, when you think it's a period piece, right? So I'm supposed to think in the 90s, but what's funny to me is that as soon as this came on, I realized that the only other actor I've ever seen depict Mr. Kaczynski was Will Ferrell on Saturday Night Live. So my interpretation as a kid of the Unabomber was way different from the rest of everybody else. It was almost in a comedic term after he was caught, but I didn't realize he terrorized the world for so many years.
Oh, a long time. Yeah. Like 16 years.
Wow. That is something else, man. And something fascinating about this film is that you kind of see his perspective of he just wants to be in the quietest nature, no technology. He's saying computers are going to ruin the world and people are going to become too dependent on technology. And the more I watched it, I was like, don't go, bro. Don't fucking say it. Don't fucking say he's right. The brilliance of the direction of this film, I got to say, is that he hates technology and he uses technology on screen almost in a monstrous sense, where if there's a plane going by, it is the loudest plane you have ever heard in your life.
I know.
The engine of a tractor, like how it almost is perverting the nature he's trying to live in. And that's a really good way to not get on his side, but just see where he's coming from.
Absolutely.
And in fact, the only people he talks to in this entire movie are his family, that you don't ever see or hear their voices. You just hear him yelling into a payphone.
Yeah, I know. It's-
Payphone, kids. A payphone is when you used to put money in to make a call in a public place and put a receiver who's God knows who just spoke up right next to your mouth,
yeah.
which I'm sure a young person during COVID, will break out in hives at the very thought of this. But yeah, that's the way it was. And I just got to say, kudos to the direction because they went all in, they stuck there. And yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I
No,
dig the film.
me too. And the it's true. I mean, living in the city, there's one point where he says, it's already like a shit pile in the city, so you don't notice any of this stuff. But where he lives, you do notice it because he is really in the middle of nowhere. And it's also worthy to say that this film was shot on the actual land that Ted Kaczynski owned. So that's what's really crazy. Like there's so much authenticity in this film. But
I thought they just trickled into Vancouver or
no,
something.
no. This was
Amazing.
shot in Montana. Yeah. And they used whatever structures that were left around there. They used. So it's interesting. It's definitely one of these films that you're going to go into and you're going to walk out of. And if you go a group of friends, you're going to be able to go have, a late night meal or a conversation, 2-3 hour conversation on this film. And that's, to me, my favorite films. I mean, how great is it when we get to go see a movie, Ryan, and we can chat about it after?
Absolutely. I mean, I saw Morbius by myself, and you, Cliff, and Julia all saw Everything Everywhere at Once. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. Do I review Morbius on this show?
No,
I mean,
listen. Morbius was Morbius.
yeah, Morbius was Morbius. That's true.
I'm not gonna throw it under the bus. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not gonna say anything until I've seen it with my own eyes. I have seen people that have talked about it that I respect that said, listen, this film, there was a bit of a witch hunt for this film online, and I don't know if I believe that, but I'm not gonna say anything until I see it with my own eyes. But Everything Everywhere All at Once is brilliant.
There you go.
There's no doubt
What's another
about that.
brilliant film? Hellraiser.
Yeah.
And I really just want to give a big shout out to the Studio House Design people because it's not just a Hellraiser shirt. The reason why I needed this shirt was because the attention to detail. I mean, putting chains on the arms is amazing. You know what I mean?
If people don't know Studio House Designs, they're a small company out of Philadelphia who sponsor both Ryan and I and keep us looking fresh. And they have the greatest shirts. I mean, this They Live shirt, the Hellraiser shirt. I love everything that Cody designed. So go check them out. They're very, very, very cool, and their shirts are very comfy as well. They're always very soft. Ryan, listen, I'm excited about this week because I think both of these people are really, really interesting, and I'm really, really glad they joined us today because Melissa, I love to see where Melissa is at this point in her life. And, I asked her when we were chatting, is it weird to be kind of behind the scenes? And she brought up a good point. She goes, I've been the bass player in every band that I've been in, besides my solo project. I'm used to kind of being in the background.
Some of my friends idolized Melissa in her time in Hole. I mean, that's it was a big deal to be in that band at that time. And I was re-listening, and Melissa's she joined the band when they were doing Live Through This, but Celebrity Skin was her first real album with them. Yeah. And I gotta say right now, the quality of bass presence from one album to another is astonishing. Big time. Celebrity Skin, the bass is brought to the forefront proudly, like an old punk rock album. And in the other albums, there was bass in it.
Yeah.
Kind of like an Injustice for All type.
I was just gonna say the same thing. Yeah. Well, Melissa's she's a great artist, and she's I love her dabbling into film. We got a chance to chat about 12 years ago when she was here for the Science Fiction Festival, and she had her project Out of Our Minds, and it was really cool because it was multimedia. It was a film, it was a soundtrack, it was a comic book, and we talk about it in the interview how she was a bit of ahead of her time with that. So. But yeah, I strongly encourage people to go check out Ted K. If you are in the Montreal area, the film will be premiering in the theater at Cinéma du Parc on Friday, April 15th. And what's great about this is both Tony and Melissa will be in attendance for the screening, and we'll be doing a Q&A post-film. So you'll be able to ask them all the questions that I'm sure you're going to have after watching Ted K. And we'll be doing a theatrical run at Cinemas Park. So definitely go check it out.
And that's amazing too, because when I was watching this, I said to myself, and this is not bullshit, Jason.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I saw this at Cinema de Park. This is
Yeah.
like one of those movies where when you go to Cinema de Park and you know Cinema de Park, you go in the mindset of, I'm going to watch something kind of experimental here.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, razzy dazzy, happy go lucky, happy ending popcorn film. I might see something gloriously fucked up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I'm a big supporter of independent cinema and small. I mean, I love theaters. I'm a supporter of theaters no matter how big or small they are. I mean, that's the experience. That's where it should be happening. So yeah, definitely go check it out. Don't watch this on your phone. Go see it in the theater if you can, because it's worth seeing it. But anyway you see it, just see it, because it's definitely worth seeing. Definitely worth seeing. I want to thank my co-host Ryan Stick for everything this week. As always, want to thank our sponsor, Heartbeat Hot Sauce. Go check them out at heartbeathotsauce.com. Pick up a 6-pack of sauce. You will be very, very happy. Thanks to Studio House Designs. Our thanks to our executive producer of our podcast, another strong female, Julia Kaczynski. And
The strongest.
Yeah, the strongest. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We really, really appreciate all the enthusiasm around the Rockman Power Hour. And you guys are the absolute best. So make sure you like, subscribe, and we will see you next week.
On the Rockman Power Hour.
On the Rockman Power Hour. Do.
Do.